Total TV is now Bluefish TV.
Young people are looking for the real thing, and they know it when they see it. Few things in life connect to teenagers like music. Just like David in the Psalms, the musicians and teenagers on this video series express their doubts, their fears, and their joys of life. Velocity is about real people on a search for faith. Should you decide to keep this 13-week Bible study, we have already enclosed an invoice for your convenience. If we haven't heard from you in 30 days, we'll assume you have decided to keep the series and we will just bill you accordingly. If you have any questions, just give us a call.
Life is in motion, moving faster than it ever has. So we establish our unique identities before this world passes us by. In these 5 episodes, Bluefish TV examines the extreme consequences of our thirst for acceptance.
Nobody understood me.
I've got to be bigger, better, and stronger.
I wanted to be someone that people liked.
I tried, basically every drug you could think of.
I was doing about a 1/4 ounce of meth a day.
And the deep satisfaction of making your own choice and finding your unique identity in Christ.
God created me in His image.
He had me satisfied.
It really fulfills something in your heart that nothing else could fulfill.
Featuring behind-the-scenes interviews from today's most popular Christian musicians, insight from leading authors and experts, and real-life stories from teens across the nation. This is freedom. This is choice. This is identity. This is life. This is velocity. Total TV is now Bluefish TV. Get comfortable with it.
Rules and regulations, anger and unbelief. Today we'll look at why people are saying no to God. This is Velocity. When recording artist Jennifer Knapp hit the music scene, she brought a raw and honest voice to Christian music.
Just don't be afraid to listen to that still small voice that's coming. I believe that comes to everyone that says, choose you this day who you will serve.
But for years, that voice was drowned out by the deafening noise of a broken home and a rebellious youth.
She's a skin-off junkie. I lived with my dad, and I always visited my mom, and then I started to understand the conflict as I got older, and my family's, arguing back and forth, and that you love me more than, you love her, or, those little conflicts of your parents wanting your affection, and as a little kid trying to figure out how to do that. And I wanted it to all be cool. If I prayed to God and said, fix this, that He would do that every single time. And when those things didn't occur the way that I wanted them, or I perceived that they should happen, I attributed that to God and got mad and said, well, fine, you don't listen to me. Forget you then, I'm going to go the other way. And so I started reading books about, Buddhism, Hinduism, and witchcraft, and for whatever reason, Christianity just didn't really seem like an option, even though my grandma, when I was a kid, kept dragging me to church every Sunday. And after a certain point, I just decided that I wasn't going to believe in God.
She's a wannabe hero. Yeah, she tried to be strong.
So basically, I left everything that I had behind where I'd grown up and went to school and was kind of trying to start a new life for myself. And I went to school, and here I'm partying, I'm drinking every day, and I'm thinking, at last, I'm finally free. And after a couple of months of that, I started realizing that wasn't freedom at all. I mean, I wanted to stop doing what I was doing because I just felt awful. not because some Christian told me that I should or that I shouldn't, but all of a sudden I just wanted to put on the brakes and I couldn't. When I saw other people who were actually living a life that I wanted, it had really at the beginning nothing to do with their faith or their Christianity, just their lifestyle, that I wanted to not wake up in the morning and not know where I was at. And that was one of the first things that drew me to several of the Christians that I knew. And as I got to know them and realize why they were the way that they were, that they had a relationship with Christ, that their confidence was drawn from a higher place, and that became far more intriguing to me, that they had relationships and they were literally praying and receiving word from God, reading the Bible and getting a conversation out of it. And as I started to get curious, more and more curious about that, I started to understand what they meant, because God was kind of cracking the door a little bit to me, and I felt like I was getting on, kind of on the party line a little bit, and it didn't take long after that for me to realize that that's really where I wanted to be.
I think one of the major misbeliefs is that if I really walk with God, if I commit myself to Christ, I'm climbing into this box, and this box has all these limits, and now I can't do this, and I can't do this. And you know what the problem was? It wasn't the commands. The problem was my misconception of God. If life and God's will and purpose and all that He has for us is this road, this journey that we're on, well, some of the road goes up through the mountains, and there's sharp turns, and there's drop-offs, hundreds of feet. If you go off the road, you're dead. And that's true of life. There's certain things, you can make bad decisions. You go off the road, you're dead, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And so what God has done is all along the road, because He loves us, He put up guardrails. Why? Because He knows when you break through a guardrail, if you've ever seen that happen, and you fall 1,000 feet, it's very painful. And so the limitations are to make sure I get to stay on the road, and where the road leads is where the deepest, greatest fulfillment in the world could ever come. And once I got on my brain, these limitations were for my good, it was like, wow. Now I get that verse that it talks about in 1 John where it says, His commandments are not hard.
So what do you think? Do you think Christianity is all rules and no fun? That it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you're spiritual? There are lots of people who say no to God because they want to be smart, and they think Christianity doesn't make sense. Listen to Stacy.
My parents took me to Sunday school. I dreaded it every Sunday. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, I hated going to church.
Most of you know how Stacy feels. She's going to church because her parents make her. But she sees what's going on in the world and it's not making sense. She has a lot of questions.
Like, if God's out there, then why does He let, like, people die? Or, like, the people in Ethiopia, like, why are they starving? To me, this says that He's not perfect.
Yeah, I consider myself a fairly smart guy. I mean, I've looked at the evidence and I conclude that there is a God who created us. I looked at the life of Jesus and I know that He had to be more than a teacher with magic tricks. I believe He was the Son of God and that He rose from the dead to bring the hope of life to the world. I'm not turning off my brain to believe these things. I'm turning it on. I've considered arguments for and against, and I've chosen to follow Jesus. Look at the evidence and make your choice. Stacy got the chance to make her choice when she was invited to go to a youth camp. Still loaded with questions, she listened and watched the people around her.
And so, like, they would have to explain things to me over and over again. It went from, like, completely making no sense at all, like, what are they talking about, to, like, me understanding what it was all about and what they were trying to tell me in church when I was, like, 5 years old.
Well, that sounds like a nice ending to a story you'd hear in church. But this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. Stacy found the most important answer about God, but sometimes living for God can complicate things. Instead of the questions about why terrorism or starvation, now Stacy struggles with what's happening in her own life that is putting up a wall between her and God.
I have this boyfriend. He's not a Christian, so, like, he doesn't really understand why I'm doing all this. So, like, he's getting angry at me. I just, like, sometimes think that maybe I shouldn't try as hard and just kind of leave it the way it is. I know once either he becomes a Christian or we break up, then everything, I think, will get much easier. Like, I can tell God's telling me to either break up with him or get him to church. Like, I'll pray about things like all the time, like over and over, like every day and every night. And sometimes I doubt that he's even listening to me.
God is supposed to be the loving Father. Well then, why does he let terrible stuff happen? A death or divorce, injury or illness, or just the loss of relationships. As the REM song says, everybody hurts. It's not profound, but it's true. But it doesn't help to take our frustrations out on God. He wants to comfort us, to help us when we're troubled. If you're angry with God, chances are you're angry with an image of God, an expectation you have. He's more than Mr. Rogers. He's more than Santa Claus. He's going to have ways way beyond your understanding. And he's going to have love that triumphs over pain. We'll be right back with more Velocity after this brief message.
In life, there are two roads to take: mediocrity or significance. The time to choose is right now. At rightnow.org, we know you're looking for purpose. We know you're seeking adventure, and we know that mediocrity isn't an option. That's why we've gathered streaming media, interviews, and articles that will direct your journey in life toward meaning and purpose like you have never experienced.
It's about being Christ amongst these people because they don't have any other way to see him.
When you turn 20, you realize that, you don't want to live a life full of regrets.
There's an opportunity right now to do something that nobody else could do.
Hey, I'm Sean Groves.
I'm Rebecca St. James.
Hi, this is Dan from Jars of Clay.
I'm Jennifer Nass, and the time is right now.
The time is right now to check out rightnow.org and start living a life of purpose. Search our database of over 500 hands-on opportunities to put your passion into action. There are only two roads. The choice is yours. rightnow.org.
All right, contestants, I'm Joe Rogaine, and for $50,000, your first challenge is this. We're going to amputate your pinky, inject it with syphilis, reattach it. You guys getting ready to go?
I'm not doing that.
No way. No.
Ain't worth it.
I don't think so.
50,000?
Maybe for 75.
50?
No.
Not a chance.
No, not gonna happen.
Guess that's our episode for tonight. Join us next week when we challenge our contestants to live out their fear, living in a septic tank for 1 week.
There's a lot of talk about spirituality these days. But what are we getting spiritual about? It means different things to different people. And unfortunately, being spiritual hasn't always resulted in changed lives.
My mom basically raised me to believe in anything I felt should be believed in. Whatever you believe in is basically your own. I have a high tolerance for all religions. If that's your religion, that's your religion. Doesn't mean that it has to be mine, but if that's what makes you happy, kind of secures you in your own state of mind, go for it. I'm not going to hold you back. Many times I've asked people, why do you believe in what you believe? Sometimes I get the answer of, that's what I was raised to believe. If I were to ask anybody anything, where does your God come from? Who created him? In my mind, basically God is a fabrication. People have come up with ideas that maybe a higher being, such as God, has put us here. And we have put the idea of God into each other's head. Just things that people need explanations for. Where we've come from, who we are, what made us come to be. Is there a higher being? And I too am searching for that answer. The Bible is put here as a set of guidelines for society. And to get somebody to believe that there's a higher power governing these rules kind of puts a state of fear that makes you think maybe I shouldn't break these rules. I personally don't know if there is a heaven or a hell. Heaven and hell gives everybody a place to look forward to and a place to fear. if we've done something wrong or done something good. I really have no problem with Christianity. I'm not saying that Jesus didn't have anything good to say. I mean, I'm sure he said a lot of great things, but he's just another man. There's been plenty of men over centuries saying good things. Well, to say that one man is completely perfect just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe he did a lot of good, but what about the things that he didn't do right? Well, I know that the story of Jesus isn't complete. There's an entire section that isn't there. Who knows where it stops? Who knows where it starts? But I'm just here to learn.
Why do people say, that's your religion? It doesn't mean it has to be mine. Well, I think one reason could be that they all see the rules that Christians have and they don't want to follow them. Now, that might be because we do have too many rules. If we were saying you have to go to church 19 times a week and have your devotions every hour and you can't drive fast or drink Mountain Dew or watch The Simpsons, well, then we're just scaring people away. But God does have standards of behavior. He wants us to obey our parents, abstain from sex before marriage, and live pure lives. I mean, face it, some people just don't want to live like that, though. When people make that choice, there's not a lot we can say except maybe, try it, you'll like it. You see, people think they're living it up when they're really dragging themselves down. Jesus gives us a life full of purpose. He gives us strength to say no to temptation, and he offers a deep joy that surpasses the temporary pleasures of the fast lane. Maybe if we started living the abundant lives Jesus gives us, people would want to have what we have. You know, Christianity would be a pretty cool religion if it weren't for all those Christians. But we're not perfect, even after we meet Jesus. We still struggle to do the right thing, but some people say no to God because they see churches full of hypocrites and they don't want any part of it. Maybe you've seen the bumper sticker that says, Christians aren't perfect, just forgiven. Well, remember that. The key to our faith is not our own self-discipline, but the grace and forgiveness of God. Yes, our churches are full of sinners. In fact, that's really the first requirement for admission, isn't it? Maybe we should hang a sign over our church doors that say sinners only. That might keep us from being so proud, and it might let everyone else know that we need help, but it's no reason to say no to God. The church is full of sinners, absolutely.
I started going to church when I was young. I attended the church services with my mom. But in the back of my head, I could never really forget what my mom did. You know, as an alcoholic and the consequences I had to suffer along with her. There was something inside of me that just naturally rebelled against my mom. And I lived kind of a double life. When I went and hung out with my friends, I was hanging out with my friends and I did what I wanted to do. And when I went home and I went to church, you know, I acted good. I was a good person. My parents thought, you know, I was okay. They knew that I didn't want to have anything to do with Christ, and they knew that I wasn't ever going to want to, so they didn't push it on me, but I knew my mom prayed for me. I began to think, you know, that there really is no such thing as God, and I began to hate church, basically, and I began to hate God. He had never done anything for me, and I didn't believe he did anything for my family. I just believed that all these people who praised God and believed in this Jesus Christ were just people who needed an answer and a help, and they found it in this person named Jesus, but he really didn't exist to me. I believe there was no heaven, I believe there was no hell. I lived my life like that, and the friends I hung out with introduced me to a little bit of everything, and I found I didn't have a taste for it, and it didn't satisfy me. And I found myself very unhappy, very lonely.
You know, I think there are a lot of people like Monica in the church. Maybe that's how you feel, doing the church thing on Sunday because your parents make you, it's where your friends are, or it's just what you've done all your life. But you're trying to have it both ways, acting Christian on Sunday, but leaving that behind the rest of the week? Why? Is it because you're afraid people will think you're weird if you take your faith too seriously? Maybe they will, but you know, some people think everything is weird. They think it's cool to do your own thing, but weird if you don't fit into the crowd. Figure that out. Don't be satisfied with just being part of the Christian club. Find your unique relationship with Jesus and live in a way that pleases Him. For years, you've been practicing your parents' religion, but what do you believe? Are you afraid of always being a kind of clone of your parents? At your age, you're supposed to be finding your own identity. But it makes no sense to ditch Christianity when that's your connection to the God who made you who you are.
I attended a church service one week, and it was at a youth conference. And this man began to speak, but he started to describe exactly how I felt deep inside of me. And he began to say, you know, you feel like your life is going nowhere. You're lonely inside. You have nothing to do. Your life's going to be nothing. And he said, you know what, give Jesus a chance. That night I went and I accepted the Lord, and I said, Lord, if you know you're real, use my life. Make something out of my life, because I can't do anything with it. I tried and I can't. That was the day my life turned upside down. I mean, I had a totally different attitude towards everything. I mean, towards life, towards my family, towards my mother. And I had found this new friend. I found Jesus. I knew that Jesus Christ was all I needed, and that's all I was ever gonna need. I mean, he had me satisfied.
God has shown himself to be this amazing God who loved me when I didn't even really love myself, who cared about me to such a level that he would give his own son for me, and who all he wants is the very best for me. And when people see that and they wake up to that, I mean, I see it happening every week around here, and they wake up to that kind of reality, all of a sudden to them, ought is out the window, and it's want. I want to worship God. I want to know more about God. I want to know more about this Bible. I want to know more about this truth, because what I do know is changing my life. And now, all of a sudden, church is about a celebration of something that's amazing. It's not about obligation to something that we ought to do.
We don't have to be clones. God wants you to use your talents and passion and personality and loving Him. This is not your parents' Christianity. You need to make it your own. Meet Jesus for yourself. Find your own way of communicating with Him and living for Him. This is Eric Orson for Velocity. See you next time.
On the next episode of Velocity.
If you find yourself doubting God, the Bible, the church, or even your own faith, you're not alone.
Doubt is a very common key ingredient in music.
God is not afraid of those questions.
Why am I Christian? Is there heaven? Is there a God? Why do I believe in him?
How a God like this could be the God of two Christians who could divorce. It's easy to just adopt your parents' faith.
I don't have all the answers, and is that okay to say?
One of the biggest lies is that we can get it all together.
I could just be myself with God, and that's all He really wants.
Total TV is now Bluefish TV.